live. Hello everybody, hello Facebook world. Welcome to the Human Rewild question and answer session on open relating. What I feel to do at the beginning of this video, perhaps while I wait for anybody to join, for any questions to be raised, I'll give a bit of an overview, some insights into my own journey with open relating and what it means to me, how I came by it in the first place. Because perhaps a good question to start with in a question and answer session on open relating is something like, why would anybody want to have a situation where someone that they have a lot of love for, a lot of intimacy for, where that person can go off and have another lover? And so my entry point into open relating, which happened about 3 years ago, was because I'd taken an 18-month period of deliberate self-imposed celibacy, because I'd observed the same kinds of patterns in my relationships play out over and over again, and I was in a place of difficulty, a place of being fairly shut down energetically, finding it quite difficult to be intimate with anybody, to communicate well with a woman that I was in a relating with. And so I had a self-imposed period of celibacy for 18 months. Now, coming out of that period of celibacy, it just so happened that the woman that I first got involved with had been practicing open relating for a year or so, and it was a condition for her, for us to start seeing each other, that the relationship be open. And at that point in time, I had no previous experience of open relating. All I really knew was that I really liked this woman a lot. And I also knew that all of my former structures, beliefs, values about relationships, I wanted to leave all of that behind. I wanted to just tear up the rulebook completely and see what would come next. And it just so happened the universe dropped this opportunity on my lap to enter a relationship with somebody where it would be open. So that first question of why on earth would you want to be with somebody when they can take another lover at any point, for me, it was a recognition that the way in which I'd done relating up until that point hadn't brought me the level of connection that I was looking for, and it had led me down the same blind alley time and time again. So of course everyone's going to have different reasons as to why they get into open relating, and all I can really do in this sharing is explain a little bit what it means for me and give a few insights into how I ended up being in an open relating. And I've now been practicing open relating for 3.5 years. Now, to touch upon some of the other ideas, some of the higher ideals, I suppose, to answer the question, why would you want to allow somebody that you have a high level of intimacy with to be able to have other lovers? And for me, it's a lot to do with enabling myself and enabling anybody that I'm with to be able to be as true and authentic and tuned in with themselves as possible. So in an everyday setting, this might look like I'm walking down the street, I'm out in the local town, I see somebody who moves me in some way, I make eye contact with somebody, or I just see somebody across the street and I feel a real attraction to that person. Now, in conventional relationships, the agreement is you can't act upon that attraction. You see somebody that you feel something for, you feel spirit and energy moving through you in a way that says, go and speak to that person, make contact, there's something there, there's a curiosity, there's an attraction, there's something. So in conventional relationships, you have an agreement with another person whereby you can't act upon that. So that just gets suppressed, that just gets put to one side, and you're not able to allow energy, spirit to move you in the way that it's trying to. And for me, in my experience over the last 2 or 3 years of doing open relating, in all areas of life, I want to be allowing spirit guide me in those ways. I want to be able to move in the way that energy is moving through me, that spirit is guiding me. And I want that for people that I'm with too. I want that for people that I have a high level of love and care for, to be able to express that part of themselves, to feel like they can act upon those feelings, to explore, to seek new potential connections, because it's a very exciting and rewarding part of life. It really is the most beautiful thing that we get to do in this lifetime, is relating with other human beings, to share intimacy, to share love, to be free with one another, to express ourselves. And open relating, I feel, gives a larger container in which to explore that. So if at any point during this sharing anybody feels to ask a question, then you can just write a comment in the box and I will get round to it. And that for me would be ideal, because otherwise I'll just be listening to the sound of myself talk and it won't feel like there's too much of an interaction going on. So if you feel to ask a question, then please do. I feel like another important aspect of open relating that I found to be particularly empowering, and again I'm going to make a generalized comparison with conventional relationships. So in my experience and from what I see in the world, in a conventional relationship, you partner up with somebody and the expectation somehow is that that other person is to be all things for you, is to bring every texture and quality and experience of intimacy and love that you require. And for somebody to put that level of expectation onto anybody, but for somebody to put that level of expectation onto me, it's a lot to ask of a single person. It really is a lot to put on one person's shoulders, that their role in your life is to fulfill every aspect of intimate relating that you have a desire to be fulfilled. And I think it's a very grown-up approach to relating, to appreciate and understand that to put all of that expectation onto one person is unrealistic. It doesn't make sense. And what can happen when you put all of that expectation onto somebody is instead of them tuning in completely with themselves, being themselves as fully as they can be, there can arise a dynamic where they have an awareness of certain needs, certain wants, certain desires that the partner has, but really deep down when they tune in with themselves, that particular thing isn't something that they feel to do. It's not something that happens naturally for them. It's not a persona or a role that they really are designed to play or that they want to play. But because you have this monogamous dynamic and you have a partner expressing, I have this need, this desire, and I want you to try and fulfill it, they may well attempt to meet that need. And in any aspect in life, if you don't really feel to do something, if it's not genuinely real to you, but you're doing it out of some form of expectation or perhaps even a fear of, if I can't be this for this person, then they're going to leave me. That's a recipe for confusion. It's a recipe for compromise. It's a fairly unhealthy dynamic, I feel. And so the benefit of open relating in this aspect is that you get to be grown up about it. You get to say to yourself and to the person that you're with, I have an awareness that I am not and cannot be all things that you are looking for in connection with other human beings. I have an awareness that that's too much of an ask for me because I am just one person moving through this life as I feel to. So it's okay that I am not able to fulfill all of your needs and vice versa. So there's an allowing there. There's a recognition of the reality of the situation. And because of that, there's an allowing that says that the person can have certain needs met with you, the ones that you are naturally bringing, the ones that you embody just through who you are. But if there's any other aspect that the person wants to have fulfilled, then it's absolutely okay that they go, and there's an openness for other people to come into their life to meet those other needs. So I think that it's almost a fairy tale perspective or a fairy tale belief that people come up with, that you'll meet one person and that person will just be all things to you. Now, perhaps there's people who would disagree. Perhaps there's people who have found that one person, that, in air quotes, soulmate. Great, fantastic, more power to you. But I feel that in my experience, and the more I step into open relating, that particular bit of programming that we have, for the most part, is unrealistic. And it leads to frustration. It leads to needs not being met. And ultimately, it leads to people being unfaithful to the agreements that they enter into in conventional relationships, because if they have a need that can't be met within the agreements of their regular relationship, then it's likely that they will then look for that need to be met elsewhere. Let's see if I can pause for a moment and see what direction we're taking next. Just so people are aware, this is an exercise in intuition over structure. So I haven't come to this with any notes in front of me. I haven't put up an agenda. I haven't even put down any questions that I would ask myself on open relating. I've just put myself in front of a camera, hit record, and this is where we are. So one thing that I think is worth talking about, and I mentioned this a little bit in the post I did yesterday, because it's easy to have many prejudices and preconceptions about what open relating is when you first hear that term. And I think for a lot of people, it brings up ideas of free love. So to me, what that means is, if you're in an open relating, it means that you can just move about as you feel to, be with whoever you feel to, whenever you feel to, and the same is true of your partner. So if I'm coming into a dynamic where I meet somebody and I hear that they're in an open relating, then that somehow means that it's just a total free-for-all. I can proceed however I want with that person, almost like I can do no wrong in approaching that person and attempting to initiate something. And this may be the case for some people. It may be that they have no agreements in their open relating. But I think that for the most part, that kind of complete, unstructured, whole openness doesn't really come from a place of true knowledge of self, an understanding of what is and is not okay with you within the container of open relating, how you do open relating, and what agreements you might want to put in place with the people that you are in an open relating with. So my experience in open relating is that it really helps to keep things simple. It helps to keep any agreements, any structure as simple as possible. But there are agreements. We are all human beings here with personalities and preferences. And it's very important to honour that within the context of open relating and be clear about what is and is not okay. And there's some very simple, obvious topics around this, because it's important to be responsible around things like sexual health. It's important to be responsible around things like contraception. And it's important to have good and high intentions when you engage with somebody, when you enter a dynamic, and just in general in life. And so to give a bit of a flavour what some of these agreements might look like from my own experience, one really good example is around the proximity of other potential lovers. Because in my experience, and from talking to people who practice this kind of relating, it can be very tiring, it can be very distressing, it can be a pain in the ass if you end up with a situation where there's a love triangle dynamic playing out. Because while open relating is a really good way to push yourself in certain areas of your life and put yourself in situations that are potentially uncomfortable, where growth can happen, you also, in my experience at least, you don't want to be in that space all the time. Ultimately, we want to have lives that are largely pleasurable, enjoyable, and not chock-a-block with incident and stress and trigger and overwhelm. So it's a very important thing to think about. If you are going to open up to new people coming into the relationship, to your partner, having new partners, it's a really good thing to think about. Is it okay with me if somebody in my immediate community, somebody that perhaps I'm going to see a lot of the time, somebody that's part of the same friendship group, becomes a lover of my partner? And for me, just to give an example of how this agreement works in my version of open relating, I make it very clear from the very beginning that if one of my partners is going to take another lover, and there's any potential, there's a situation where the three of us are going to be in the same place at the same time, then on that occasion, my partner is with me. And if that third person who is there doesn't agree with that, or has a problem with that, then it's something that needs to be communicated very clearly about. Because ultimately, if I'm in a situation where my partner and one of my partner's lovers are all in the same place, I want to be able to choose whether or not I enter that space in the first place. So if I know that my partner's going to be with somebody else and I'm going to just be there in the background, then perhaps I don't want to be there. Perhaps I'd rather go and spend an evening doing something else, because that situation, it just sounds unpleasant to me. I don't want to be involved in that. So the way it works for me is that if that sort of situation arises, then it needs to be clear beforehand who each person feels to be with, because for the most part, I don't want to get involved in an intimate three-way situation in that kind of setting. And in my experience, I'm interested in women. My partners are women. And I don't want to be involved with another man and the woman that I'm with. To put it bluntly, I don't want to cross swords. I don't want to invite that energy or that dynamic directly into the space in between my partner and I don't want to be in a relating with that third person, ultimately. So if I feel their energy too closely, if I feel their presence too closely, if I feel like they're leaving a lot of themselves in the space between me and my partner, and it's kind of messy and it's sticky and it's unclear, then that's just not okay with me. Because ultimately, I'm not in a relating with that person, I'm in a relating with my partner. And this is another actually quite important agreement or rule that comes along with open relating. Another example of how it's not just a complete open-ended, free-for-all, free love extravaganza. As I described a little bit beforehand, there is an energetic effect when somebody comes into the dynamic. So if a partner of mine takes a new lover, there are energetic effects of that. It can be felt. And so if I'm feeling too much of that, if I'm feeling that other person in the room, if I'm having to sit with my partner and help them to process a lot of the confusion, a lot of the difficulty, a lot of the lack of clarity from a third party, then it's like I'm in a direct relating with that third person, and it's a bit too messy. Of course, it's my intention to be loving in relationships. So if these things do arise, then I will do my utmost to sit with that person and to be loving and to be open and to help them in their process. But too much of that, too much messiness, too much energetic splashback almost, I will speak up about that. I will say, yeah, it's too much, or something needs to change. So, as well as having certain agreements in place around the proximity of a third person or more, there's also a requirement that anybody new coming into the dynamic is of a certain standard, basically, is doing their work, is looking at themselves deeply, is ideally having some kind of spiritual practice, some kind of development work they're going through, maturation work. It can be many different things. But I don't want a situation where somebody that I have a lot of love for, a lot of intimacy for, and a very deep and profound connection has a kind of man-child come in and just start muddying up the space and creating chaos and confusion and essentially a lot of processing work, clearing work for other people to do for them. I'd much rather have a situation where somebody is upstanding, upright in themselves, and is coming from that place, coming with things to give, coming with love to share, coming with gifts, rather than coming with a lot of their own work to dump into the space and have us all work on collectively. For me, that's not a healthy dynamic. So for those of you who felt like open relating was something totally free, without boundaries, without rules, it's not always the case. It's not the case in my experience of open relating. So I've talked a little bit about why you might want to get into open relating in the first place, and shared that in my experience it was just a general awareness that the way in which I'd done relating, the way I'd been relating to women beforehand, was leading me down blind alleys and was getting me stuck, getting me to a position of shutdown, complete withdrawal. So that was my entry point. I wanted to tear up the rule book that I created for myself in relationships and start completely afresh. And it just so happened that I met a woman who had been doing open relating for some time. Disculpa. And that was my entry point. And I'm so grateful that happened. Incredibly grateful. The experiences of the last, did I say 2.5 or 3.5 years? This was in, I'm not sure if it was 2.5 or 3.5. I think it was 3.5. Yeah, so incredibly grateful for the experiences that have come my way through the medium, through the vessel, the vehicle of open relating. I do firmly believe that relationships, and in particular sex, are the most powerful, transformative spiritual tools available to us in this lifetime, available to everybody. There are many different forms of yoga. There are many different spiritual practices, but in my experience, stepping into open relating and combining it with other practices that I will talk about at some point in the near future. Things like semen retention, what most people would call tantra, I suppose, but is also referred to as sexual kung fu. It's one of my favourite ways of referring to it, actually, sexual kung fu. Sexual alchemy, and just deep presence. These are all incredibly transformative tools. And one of the most accessible ways for us to transcend our everyday, mundane, separate experience of existence. So yeah, at this point I really feel to express gratitude to Friedel for starting me out on this path of open relating. And it's been an incredible journey, and it continues to be an incredible journey. So yeah, utmost love and gratitude for all of those who I am and have been interrelating with since setting out on this particular path. So right now Facebook is telling me that there is a viewer. There have been a couple of other viewers. So at this point, if anybody feels to ask a question, that would be very welcome. If not, I'll ask myself another question. So right now I am fishing around in my mind, putting myself in the shoes of somebody else, thinking what sort of question they might ask. If you are watching and you feel to jump in with a question, then that would be great. If not, then let's see what comes up. So I feel to speak a little bit to the benefits and the changes that I felt in myself since setting out on this path of open relating. Because I do really feel that this type of relating teaches you to look more and more within yourself to find the love and the validation and the affection, the appreciation that we all have some need for. And this is because it puts you through a certain process of initiation time and time again. when it becomes apparent that somebody that you're with, that you have deep love and affection and intimacy for, has taken another lover, or even if there's the potential to take another lover, that process is initially very deep, very raw, and it requires you to do a hell of a lot of internal work, because initially every part of you is saying that something has gone wrong. This person has experienced pleasure, intimacy, connection with somebody else, and that somehow is wrong. That somehow is, well, it's painful. It can be painful for sure. But then the mind layers on top of what is essentially just a sensation of pain, ideas of betrayal, ideas of not being good enough, ideas, all these comparisons that can come up with somebody that ultimately is just a fantasy. You don't know anything really about this other person other than what you can intuit and what you can feel and what is communicated to you from your partner. So being put into that process whereby someone that you have a lot of love and affection for and a deep, deep connection has taken another lover, it really requires you to find some deep, deep resilience in yourself. It requires you to go on many different threads and chains of self-analysis, to listen to what your mind is saying, to listen to what your inner child is saying, to listen to what all these different aspects of you are saying that are just hurting and are trying to create stories and lay blame and almost embellish what's happening with all of this decoration and all of these explanations and logic and reasons. But ultimately what's happening in this process is you're being required to look very deep within yourself for the feeling of validation, for the feeling of intimacy, for the feeling of being held lovingly, that up until that point you had projected or required from that person that you're with, but now you're being taught, prompted to locate those things within yourself, to be your own self-validation, to be your own self-love, to be your own assurance, to hold yourself. Because it's one thing that can happen in any style of relating, in many different relationships in life, that we as human beings come to depend on another to bring those qualities into our life. I'm just going to pause that thought a moment because I've had a ping from somebody. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. That's really sweet. So personally, the first 6 months or so of being in an open relating, there was nobody else involved for either of us. And that was a really interesting process, because despite there being nobody else involved, my mind was still throwing a shit fit about being in an open relating. All the potentiality, all of the future projecting that minds do, all of the insecurity, all of the anxiety, was just a maelstrom, a whirlwind. And this was in an environment where I knew full well that my partner wasn't with anybody else. So what that points to for me, and I think what that points to for anybody entering into that kind of dynamic, is all of this uncertainty, all of this unsureness, all of this, if that's even a word, insecurity existed in me. And that first 6 months of being in a relationship where just the potential of my partner being with somebody else was just sucking all of that stuff up to the surface for me to look at. And I've said it several times, I'm incredibly grateful to that process. I'm incredibly grateful to putting myself in an environment where I'd opened up the realms of possibility to allow my partner to be with somebody else. And just the very act of that in itself brought about a very intense and difficult and deep process, which ultimately shone a light on so many parts of my internals that were unsure, that sought reassurance, that sought comfort from somebody else, that probably, in my experience in relationships in the past, had attached quite strongly to the person that I was with, and had put that person in the position of providing things for me, providing comfort, providing love, perhaps, providing intimacy, affection. And when you can provide all of those things yourself, from deep within the core of your being, and then come to meet another who is doing similar work, the realms of possibility, the realms of experience, everything just goes up a good half dozen levels. The energy that you will be able to hold as an individual, once you've clarified these parts of yourself that are unsure, that are insecure, once you've done the work to feel whatever it is that needs to be felt within these deep parts of your being, and you've cleared that lack of clarity, you've cleared that anxiety, you've cleared all those different energies of fear, of uncertainty, of grasping, then that's just making you a bigger and bigger vessel, a bigger and bigger container to hold more and more love. And that is a big gift of open relating. Initiation is something that we've really lost contact with as society, as Western society, speaking very generally, but for the most part it's true. In my life, initiation took the form of playing rugby as a teenager and drinking a lot and doing stupid shit, like just doing stupid shit. So it's really beneficial that as adults we can come across different areas of life that can provide initiation, so that we can clear a lot of the backlog that we've been left with from upbringing, from adolescence, early life experiences. Because in many indigenous cultures, that form of initiation is done in a very deliberate and structured way, and ultimately it does what I'm describing here in open relating, is it puts us way out into the woods, way out onto the savannah, way out into the night, completely by ourselves, with nobody else there to provide comfort and reassurance for us. So we have no choice but to look within and find those things within us, locate the feeling of them, locate the vibration of them, and amplify that vibration and embody that vibration. So speaking again from a personal level, I've been put through many of these kinds of processes through my experience with open relating. And the level of growth I've experienced in the 3.5 years of doing open relating is astronomical. And the level of love that I'm capable to experience, both to give and to receive, because this is one area where it's interesting. People feel like it's so important to be loving, to give love, but it's equally as important to be able to receive love, to be clear enough in yourself that you don't fidget or squirm or disperse in the presence of love. And it teaches you a real broader perspective of life. It helps you to zoom out and to tune in more regularly with, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Yeah, that broader perspective, instead of getting very involved and very lost in granular detail and all the different labyrinths and thought processes. Because even in moments where something challenging and difficult is happening within the relating, I'll name it, say for example, again, your partner has taken another lover and it's hard, it's really difficult. Because ideally in an open relating, whenever you see somebody that really moves you, and I mean really moves you internally, really lights up your being, you have the freedom to go and express how that person is making you feel. And hopefully you will do that. You won't feel too guilty or ashamed, or you won't repress that. You'll go and do it. So even in those moments where that dynamic is playing out for your partner, it helps you to tune back in and to have that broader perspective that there have been times when you've enjoyed that freedom too. So you can understand a bit more what's going on for that person, and you can feel feelings of appreciation, feelings of gratitude, and just acceptance while that process or that dynamic plays out. And also, one thing I've experienced through my practice of open relating, because one thing that we sometimes forget, I feel, is that any depth of sensation, any depth of experience is deeply, deeply life-affirming. So when you're sitting with such an intensity of grief and sadness, and you're racked with sobs, and you just feel like the world is ending around you, that depth and that intensity of sensation and experience is incredibly beautiful. It's life-affirming. And you're only able to go to those depths of difficulty and suffering because you have the complete transverse, the complete opposite capacity for transcendental, blissful, orgasmic experiences of bliss and connection. So the difficulty that can arise in open relating, and the pain that perhaps you will feel when you find that your partner has taken another lover, it is a gift. It really is a gift. And as long as you're staying authentic in yourself and you're communicating and you're not attempting to be anything, you're not attempting to be okay with the situation, you're not saying what you think you should say, you're just doing you, then that depth and intensity of emotion is a gift, and it brings about a very deep and profound level of transformation and growth. As long as you can avoid falling into the trap of going, it's all your fault. It's all somebody else's fault. And that's not to say that sometimes, because we all have personalities, we all have preferences, we are human beings, so we judge, and we are judged, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Shouldn't have an aversion, because let's say I look at you in the eyes and say you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen on the face of the earth. I just judge the fuck out of you. So an allowance of that, I think, is healthy. And now I've lost my original train of thought. So we'll pause there for a moment. I see that there is apparently one comment. Aha. And it's from Tom. And Tom asks, what would you say could be the most important takeaway thought for those in a committed monogamous relationship? Yeah, it's a very good question. And I feel like one thing I want to get across is that I have my preferences in life, and I have put myself into various different situations out of curiosity, out of exploration, because this is just my role, what I want to do in this life. But I'm not attempting to convince anybody or persuade anybody that one is better than the other, that one is somehow more virtuous or more loving or more anything. I don't want to enter into a comparison too much between the different styles of relating. I'll speak from my own personality, my own preferences and my own experiences. But there is no better or worse. There is no right or wrong way of doing things, as long as there is an intention to be loving and in connection and to do no harm. So that's the first thing to say. The most important takeaway thought for those in a committed monogamous relationship. Lovingness is the most important thing. That whatever happens in our relating with human beings at any point, and particularly in intimate relationships, that identifying and coming back to the path, the reaction, not the reaction, the response, that is the most loving, is where the medicine is, it's where the healing is, it's where the growth is and the connection and all of the beauty. Now, what is loving varies very greatly. And sometimes in my experience, I've been through situations where what the most loving thing for me to do is to be of utmost truth and authenticity in myself and what I'm communicating to somebody. So lovingness in that way can sometimes look and feel quite harsh to the person who's receiving it. But ultimately, I do believe that the biggest act of love, the most important act of love to engage in and engage in consistently, is to love yourself. And that means just being as deeply connected to yourself as much of the time as possible. Communicating clearly. Your experience of being and relating with the other. Letting them know how certain interactions land in you, how certain things make you feel. But above all, through all of this lovingness, is to do your utmost not to take anything personally that is being communicated to you. Because whatever situation you find yourself in where there's a strong trigger, there is a part of the dynamic that's playing out based on the situation in that moment, but there's also 90, perhaps 95% that's being brought from past experiences, that's being brought from past karma, that has nothing to do with you or even the situation that you're in. So, lovingness, first and foremost, and primarily love and lovingness for yourself. And also make it a mantra for yourself to say, to not take anything personally, to not feel the need to defend yourself even. And this is particularly true, I feel, for men. When your partner is in a very intense anything, a rage or a deep sadness or whatever it is, and for some reason they are associating you with that, perhaps even blaming you for that, or just expressing themselves very strongly around anything, just try to notice and not indulge that feeling to defend yourself. Because, as I've said, it has nothing to do with you. It has very little to do with you. And even if it did have everything to do with you, doesn't help to take it personally and to defend and to enter into debate too much. And there's one other thing I feel to say around, and this is true for all relationships, I feel, but monogamous relationships also. I feel like it's very important to keep in very intimate and close contact with exactly who you are as an individual, exactly who you are in your life, how you move, what you like to do, the ways in which you like to express yourself. And the benefit of that, particularly in a monogamous and intimate, close, committed monogamous relationship where there's a lot of physical closeness a lot of the time, it helps prevent a situation where you completely lose sight of where your energy and your being ends and the other's energy and the other's being begins. Now, there's times where it's really beautiful to lose sight of that. When you're making love, when you're being very close and loving and intimate, it's beautiful sometimes to lose that barrier between the two of you and just become one. And that's wonderful. But I feel like in a long-term committed monogamous relationship, having time and space to tune back in with exactly what you are as an autonomous, sovereign individual is of immense benefit. It's of immense benefit to you because ultimately these are the ways in which your unique, energetic, physical, mental, complete setup is here to do its thing, is here to express itself, is here to do you. And that's a very important thing to stay in contact with. But also, it creates more opportunity for an intensity of polarity between you and your partner. Because when you tune back into exactly what it is that you are, and you're vibrating at that particular frequency, it has then a more impact, a more profound effect on the energy of the other. So sparks tend to fly more, and intensity is felt more often, more readily. So yeah, thank you, Tom, for your question. It's really great to hear from you. And lots of love to you and Audrey, and to Savu, Bailey, and your whole family. Our whole family. So I've been going for an hour. And I'll just take a moment to pause, to have a drink, and to feel into whether there is more to be said or whether that's a good place to stop. So I'm going to end with a bit of information for everybody out there. So this week, as you now are well aware, I've felt very strongly to start sharing more on sex and relationships. And I wrote a post earlier, today or yesterday, on that theme from which this question and answer session arose. And the first topic that came up was open relating. That was the first thing I felt to share. Now I'm going to keep going in this vein. I'm going to be bringing more topics on sex and relationships to the fore. And I mentioned in my last post that I'm going to be covering such topics as semen retention, premature ejaculation, divine union, connected union, and yeah, potentially others too. I am still offering myself as a coach and a mentor, and I'm also offering energy work, Reiki sessions. Up until this point, I've been offering Reiki for free, and I've had several people come forward, and I've had several sessions with people, and the feedback that I'm getting from that particular practice has been very positive. So I will be making a post about that very soon to bring that to everyone's attention again. So with any of the topics that we've touched on today, with any of the points that I've made, anything to do with this sharing, if it resonates with you, if it moves you, if it shines a light on certain things that you want to go deeper into, then I'm here to support you in that process. So get in touch. I generally offer a free 30-minute consultation to start things off, to see how the dynamic works, see how we can work together. But I am here to assist in all of the things that I've talked about and more. So do get in touch if you feel the call to dive deeper into your own work. So I'm going to wrap things up from there. The page on Facebook is Human Rewild. My name is Harry Wilder. You can email me at harry@humanrewild.net. You can send me a message on Facebook. You can comment on the thread, get involved with the conversation, because it moves you. Sex and relationships, I mean, it's a fundamental, most beautiful, primal part of life that we get to explore. So get involved with the conversation, get in touch, and so much love and gratitude for watching, for getting involved, and I hope to hear from you soon. That's all for now. Ciao, ciao.